Hello and welcome. You're watching Editor's Lens with me, Ina Sivaj. The election is the biggest festival of democracy where the public chooses their leader through their votes. But the statement doesn't quite apply to Putin, who is around 4,983 kilometers away from India. Voting for the presidential elections took place in Russia from March 15th to 17th. In this election, Putin faced three other candidates, but it was already clear that Putin would emerge victorious. The election was merely a formality because Vladimir Putin was and will continue to be the president of Russia. This is evident from the election results, with Putin receiving a staggering 88% of the votes according to the Russian Election Commission. His opponent, Nikolai Kharknov, received 4.4% of the votes, Vladislav Davankov received 3.8%, and Leonid Listulsky of the Liberal Democratic Party received 3.2%. Putin's overwhelming victory confirms that there was no real competition against him.
У нас нет предпочтений ни к одному из кандидатов в президенты Соединенных Штатов Америки. Мы будем работать с тем, кому окажут доверие избиратели.
This trend of one-sided victories for Putin is not limited to this election. Ever since Putin first became president, he has consistently secured unilateral victories. In the year 2000, Putin was elected president for the first time, receiving 54% of the votes. Subsequently, in the presidential elections of 2004, he garnered 72% of the votes. Following this, in 2012, he received 65% of the votes. In the presidential election of 2018, Putin secured 77% of the votes, and this time in 2024 elections, he received 88% of the votes. It can be said in Putin's case that there has never been any anti-incumbency sentiment against him. Putin has consistently emerged as a strong contender in every election. However, his victory this time is significant because it comes at a time when Russia has been engaged in a prolonged conflict with Ukraine.
It appears from the polling, these election results, and the polling from the Levada Institute, which is independent and universally respected, that the war is very, very popular inside Russia. So that's the one of the ingredients behind Putin's victory in this election. That, of course, plus the fact that there was no real opposition and that there has not been freedom of speech for quite some time in Russia, especially when it comes to criticizing the war.
Amidst this extended conflict, there were voices of dissent against Putin in Russia, and he faced considerable criticism. It seems that for the first time, Putin's grip on the presidential seat is weakening. However, the election results have shown that it is not only difficult but almost impossible for Putin to step down from the presidency. Putin received 94.12% of the votes in Lugansk and over 95% in Donetsk. Both these regions were originally part of Ukraine, but Russia seized control of these areas during the conflict with Ukraine. In these regions too, people exercised their voting rights for the first time in Russian elections, and Putin emerged as their top choice once again, becoming the president of Russia for the fifth time.
Ни к одному из кандидатов в президенты Соединенных Штатов Америки. Мы будем работать с тем, кому окажут доверие избиратели. Но использование административных ресурсов, судебной системы, но это же стало просто смешным и позором на весь мир для Соединенных Штатов и для вашей демократической, так называемой в кавычках, системы.
Putin declared that Russia would continue to progress under his leadership. There could be two reasons for Putin's victory. First, receiving 88% of the votes indicates that he is a popular leader in Russia. Second, Putin's repeated presidency can be attributed to two main factors. The first significant factor is the constitutional amendment brought by Putin in 2020, which extended his presidency until 2036. After 2024, Putin could contest the presidential elections in 2030, allowing him to potentially remain president until 2036. This means Putin could potentially continue as president until 2036 if he chooses to do so.
In the past, he has used election victories to implement unpopular measures. Internationally, Russia is likely to continue to test the determination of the NATO alliance, and there's speculation that Russia could attempt some sort of test of NATO's resolve by launching an attack on a NATO country, not necessarily with troops, but possibly through cyber attacks.
In Russia, no leader can challenge Putin. If someone dares to challenge him, they are either eliminated or permanently imprisoned. In Russia, only those individuals thrive who are favored by President Putin himself. Over the past 10 years, several of Putin's opponents have been accused of being eliminated by the Federal Security Service, which is FSB, Russia's intelligence agency.
Коллеги, в поле вашего постоянного контроля и внимания должны оставаться обеспечение экономической безопасности и противодействия коррупции.
Some have allegedly been poisoned, while others have met with fatal accidents, leading Western countries to suspect foul play. Speaking against Putin in Russia carries severe consequences, and history bears witness to this.
Уровень безопасности банковской и в целом финансовой системы. Оказывать поддержку нашим компаниям, которые сегодня активно развиваются, несмотря ни на какие препятствия им создаваемые, осваивают новые рынки. При этом, конечно, сталкиваются и с незаконными санкциями, и с нечестной конкуренцией, и с откровенно враждебными действиями, за которыми опять же стоят власти ряда государств.
The former KGB spy Sergei Skripal, who was accused of espionage for Britain, was poisoned in England. Both Sergei and his daughter were poisoned in 2018, but they survived. Skripal had previously been sentenced to 13 years in prison for espionage, although he was later pardoned. He was granted British citizenship and has since been residing in Britain. In Russia, Putin's opponents have always accused him of eliminating his adversaries. The list is extensive. Activist Vladimir Karamurza was the target of attempted poisoning in both 2015 and 2017. In the same year, in April, Putin's critic energy tycoon Khodorkovsky was sentenced in a Moscow court on charges of treason and several other offences. Former spy and Kremlin critic Alexander Litvinenko was poisoned with polonium in his tea in London in 2006. He died shortly afterward at the age of 43. In 2016, a British investigation revealed Russian involvement in the murder. Although Russia denied any involvement, journalist Anna Politkovskaya was shot dead on October 7, 2006, as she was returning home. Her murder sparked outrage in Western countries. On February 16 of this year, Alexei Navalny, Putin's staunchest opponent, died. Allegations suggest that he was kept in sub-zero temperatures to weaken him, resulting in slowed blood circulation and his eventual death. There is a saying in Rome, if you attack a king, make sure you kill him. Meaning, if you rebel against a king, ensure that he is completely eliminated. If the king survives, the rebels will face death.
Спасибо. Спасибо большое.
This holds truth for Putin, the president of Russia. It is a well-known fact that Putin holds sway over Russia, and what he desires come to pass in the country. However, this reality is unsettling for Western countries. Putin is set to remain the president of Russia until 2030, but his gaze is fixed on 2036 as well. To understand Putin's plan for 2036, one must delve into his electoral history. Before becoming president, Putin served as Russia's prime minister. In 1999, then President Boris Yeltsin appointed Putin as prime minister. Shortly afterwards, Yeltsin resigned and Putin assumed the presidency for the first time after winning the presidential elections on March 26, 2000. Putin won his first presidential elections in March 2000 and was re-elected for a second term in March 2004. The Russian Constitution of 1993 stipulates that a person can hold the presidency for only 2 consecutive terms. Therefore, Putin had to step down from presidency in 2008. Afterward, Putin nominated Dmitry Medvedev as successor and himself assumed the role of prime minister. However, during Medvedev's presidency, a significant amendment was made to the Russian Constitution. extending the presidential term from 4 to 6 years. In 2012, Putin was elected president for the third time, and after serving another 6-year term, he was re-elected for a fourth term in March 2018. In July 2020, Putin introduced a constitutional amendment that extended his potential presidency until 2036, granting him the power to remain in office for an extended period. Russia has long been notorious for its secretive politics. Wherever invisible eyes remain fixated both externally and internally on the Kremlin, numerous adversaries persist, including the United States, prompting questions about the impartiality of Russia's electoral process. Even the president of Ukraine has deemed Russia's elections illegal. By the year 2029, Putin will have completed 29 years as Russia's most powerful leader, echoing the notoriety of Stalin, who held the pinnacle of Soviet Union politics from 1925 to 1953, establishing a totalitarian regime. Putin, following a similar trajectory, is currently 71 years old, and by 2036, he'll be 83. It will be intriguing to observe how long Putin remains in the Russian presidency.